Hello. So, again, got lots of books. So, I'll try to go through them one by one, see how much it takes. Last time, I was reading so much. Actually, I got really late, and I did have a few. One of them that I had to leave or like in the middle of it. It was like 1 a.m. I was already dying. Um, that was, if I remember correctly, do I have it here yet? No, I don't. This one I didn't get to. But it's another one that's like Religions of Skyrim or something like that. No, Religions of Tamriel. That was a lot. So yeah. Let's start with this one first. I don't think I have read it. Oh god, no. I don't think I read it yet. So yeah. Boethiah's Proving. The following account is true. May it serve as a warning to those with ears to hear what's hearts to know. On a certain day, at a certain time, the faithful gathered to perform certain rituals, hoping to gain a glimpse of their master. The day was correct, the summoning true. Slashing a smoking tear through the veil, she, very self-apparent, appeared before them, terrible and resplendent. She came arrayed in ebony darker than a moonless night, wielding a blade burning hotter than the surface of the sun. And though she wore the guise of a Dunmer warrior queen, she towered above them like a statue carved from the Red Mountain itself. Why have you disturbed me? Surprised, the first among them prayed, O Boethiah, Prince of Bloods, Deceiver of Nations, Queen of Shadows, Goddess of Destruction, we come to worship thee. She looked down upon her followers, gathered to bear witness. Frowning, she asked the first, Tell me, you who profess to know me, how shall I know you? Afeared, he exclaimed, Each night I pray to thee, each night I call out thy wondrous names. Surely you must recognize the sound of my voice. Why, thy most devoted of believers. She frowned and let out a long sigh, and then of a sudden he was gone, the air from her lungs dispersing him. Turning to the second, she asked, And you, how shall I measure the worth of your existence? Stunned by the power of her voice, he bowed before her, darkening visage. She clapped her hands, and he too was gone. To the third, And you, tell me how shall I know you apart from such as were they, of whom there is no trace. Shaken and speechless from the nullifications of his brethren, he whispered, Have mercy upon us. She blinked twice. Once he was in agony, twice he was destroyed. She cast a withering glance across the remaining and said, I do not grant mercy. And so it was with the others. She putting them to proof, they offering none. Finally she came to me, eyes aglow. Aglow? I haven't read that word yet. Finally she came to me, eyes aglow with anger, tongue wet with hate, and said, Of all my believers, but two remain. Tell me, second to last, with what shall you prove your existence? Without hesitation, I drew forth my blade and buried it in the chest of the other who stood beside me, and without fear I replied, Ask him whose blood now sprouts from my blade if I exist. She smiled, and the gates of oblivion opened between her teeth. Then she said, Tell me, now last of my followers, wherefore do you remain where the others do not? I retrieved my blade and offered it up, saying, I am alive because that one is dead. I exist because I have the will to do so, and I shall remain as long as there are signs of my handwork, such as the blood dripping from this blade. Accepting my gift, she nodded and said, Indeed. If in the reading your blood boils in your veins and your mind blazons with fire, then Boethiah calls you. It is then most wise to heed her call. Find her on the mount which overlooks Windhelm. Meet us there and be tested. Find her on the mount which overlooks Windhelm. Meet us there and be tested. Wait, I know, but I cannot check it because I'm in Solstheim. Yeah, I'll try to keep like a note of that. Cleansing of the what? Cleansing of the Fane. Okay. The Chronicles of the Holy Brothers of Marku? Volume 4. Another one with volumes. Or the Cleansing of the Fane. Interesting. Chronicles of the Holy Brothers. I might leave it. No. Should I? Thing is that you don't know which series they're from because of the name. So let's read it. Who cares? Maybe it's like a standalone thing. Editor's note. This is the only surviving fragment of the Chronicle of the First Era sect of the Alician Order. It seems to have been kept at their great monastic complex at Lake Canulus, which was raised during the War of Righteousness, First Era, 23-21, and its archives destroyed or dispersed. Note also that Alessian scribes of this time customarily dated events of the apotheosis of Alesia, First Era 266. Here is recorded the events of the year 127 of the Blessed Alesia. In this year was the day darkened over all lands, and the sun was all it were. What? And the sun was all as it were master, but 3 days old, and the stars about him at midday. This was the first of first seed. All who saw it were dismayed, and said that a great event should come hereafter. So it did. For that same year issued forth a great concourse of devils from the ancient Elvish temple Malava. Such had not been since the day of King Belharsa. These devils greatly afflicted the land, such that no man could plough or reap or seed, and the people appealed to the brothers of Marco for succor. And then Abbot Cosmas gathered all the brothers and led them to Malava, also known as the High Fane of the Elvish tongue, and came against it with holy fire, and the foul demons were destroyed, and many devilish relics and books found therein were burned, and the land had peace for many years. That's it? That's it. Okay, it was really short. Deathbrand? I read, right? A Pirate's Tale. Yeah, this one was good. 5 songs of King Wulfharth. Okay. Short's Tongue. The first song, The King of Wulfharth, is ancient. First Era 500, after the defeat of the Alician army at Glenumbria Moors, where King Hoag Mercular was slain, Wulfharth of Atmora was elected by the Pact of the Chieftains. His thumb was so powerful that he could not verbally swear into the office, and scribes were used to draw up his oaths. Immediately thereafter, the scribes wrote down the first new law of his reign, a fiery reinstatement of the traditional Nordic pantheon. The edicts were outlawed, their priests put into the stake, and their halls set ablaze. The shadow of King Borgas had ended for a span. For his zealotry, King Wulfharth was called Shor's Tongue, and Ysmir, Dragon of the North. Kain's son. Dragon of the North. Okay, yeah. Kain's song. The second song of King Wulfharth glorifies his deeds in the eyes of the old gods. He fights the eastern orcs and shouts their chief into hell. He reveals the 418th step of High Hrothgar, which had been damaged by a dragon, when he swallowed a thundercloud to keep his army from catching cold. The Nords call him the Breath of Kain. The Breath of Kain. There's a shout that's called Kain's Breath or something. Old Knocker. The third song of King Wulfharth tells his death. Orcay, an enemy god, had always tried to ruin the North, even in Mora, where he stole their years away. Seeing the strength of King Wulfharth, Orcay summoned the ghost of Alduin Time Eater again. Nearly every Nord was eaten down to 6 years old. Boy Wulfharth pleaded to Shor, the dead chieftain of the gods, to help his people. Shor's own ghost then fought the Time Eater on the spirit plane as he did at the beginning of time, and he won. And Orc's folk, the Orcs, were ruined. As boy Wulfharth watched the battle of the sky, he learned a new thum. What happens when you shake the dragon just so. He used this new magic to change his people back to normal. In his haste to save so many, though, he shook too many years out of himself. He grew older than the greybeards and died. The flames of his pyre were said to have reached the hearth of Kine itself. The Ash King. The fourth song of King Wulfharth tells of his rebirth. The dwarves and devils of the eastern kingdoms had started to fight again, and the Nords hoped they might reclaim their ancient holdings there because of it. They planned an attack, but then gave up, knowing that they had no strong king to lead them. Then in walked the devil of Dagoth, who swore he came in peace. Moreover, he told the Nords a wondrous thing. He knew where the heart of Shor was. Long ago, the chief of the gods had been killed by elven giants, and they ripped out Shor's heart and used it as a standard to strike fear into the Nords. This worked until Isgamor shouted some sense, and the Nords fought back again, knowing that they were going to lose eventually. The elven giants hit the heart of Shor so that the Nords might never have their god back. But here was the devil of Dagoth with good news. The dwarves and devils of the eastern kingdom had his heart, and this was the reason for their recent unrest. The Nords asked the devil of Dagoth why he might betray his countrymen. And he said that the devils have betrayed each other since the beginning of time, and this was so, and so the Nords believed him. The tongues sung Shor's ghost into the world again. Shor gathered an army as he did of old, and then he sucked in the long-strewn ashes of King Wulfharth and remade him, for he needed a good general. But the devil of Dagoth petitioned to be that general too, and he pointed out his role as the blessed harbinger of this holy war. So Shor had two generals, the Ash King and the devil of Dagoth, and he marched on the eastern kingdoms with all the sons of SKYRIM. Red Mountain. The fifth song of King Wulfharth is sad. The survivors of the disaster came back under a red sky. That year is called Sun's Death. The devil of Dagoth had tricked the Nords, for the heart of Shor was not in the eastern kingdoms, and had never been there at all. As soon as Shor's army had got to the Red Mountain, all the devils and dwarves fell upon them. Their sorcerers lifted the mountain and threw it into Shor, trapping him underneath Red Mountain until the end of time. They slaughtered the sons of SKYRIM, but not before King Wulfharth killed King Tumalakath, the dwarf orc, and doomed his people. Then Beck, the devil, blasted the Ash King into hell, and it was over. Later, Kine lifted the ashes of Ysmir into the sky, saving him from hell and showing her sons the color of blood when it is brought by betrayal. And the Nords will never trust another devil again. The secret song of Wulfharth Ash King. The truth at Red Mountain. The heart of Shor was in Redstain, as Dagoth Ur has promised. As Shor's army approached the westernmost bank of the inner sea, they stared across the Red Mountain, where the Dwemer armies had gathered. News from the scouts reported that the Chimeri forces had just left Narcissus, and that they were taking their time joining their cousins against the North. Dagoth Ur said that the tribunal had betrayed their king's trust, and that they sent Dagoth Ur to Lorcan, for that is what they called Shor in Resdain, so that the god might wreak vengeance on the dwarves for the hubris that Nerevar's peace with the Dwemer would be the ruin of Belothiway. This was the reason for the slow muster, Dagonur said. Wow, this is very long. The armies grow, and Lorcan, for that is what they call Shor in Resdain, said, I do not wreak vengeance on the dwarves for the reasons that the tribunal might believe I do. Nevertheless, it is true that they will die by my hand, but whoever should side with them. This Nerevar is the son of Boethiah, one of the strongest Padomikes? Padomikes? He is a hero to his people, despite his tribunal, and he shall muster enough that this battle will be harder going still. We will need more than what we have, and so Dagoth Ur, who wanted the dwarfs as dead as the tribunal did, went to Kogoran and summoned his house chapfils, his nixbones, his wizards, archers, his stolen men of brass, and the Ash King, Wulfharth, Hoarder Ysmir, went and made peace with the Orcs, in spite of his Nordic blood, and they brought many warriors but no wizards at all. Many Nords could not bring themselves to ally with their traditional enemies, even in the face of Red Mountain. They were close to desertion when Wulfharth said, "Don't you see where you really are? Don't you know who Shore really is? Don't you know what the war is?" And they looked from the king to the god to the devils and orcs, and some knew, some really knew, and they were the ones that stayed. The Doom Drum. Nerevar carried Keening, a dagger made of the sound of the shadow of the moons. His champions were Dumag, Dwarf King, who carried a hammer of divine mass, and Alandrosul, who was the immortal son of Asura and wore the wraith mail. They met Lorcan at the last battle of Red Mountain. Lorcan had his heart again, but he had long been from it, and he needed time. Wulfharth met Sul but could not strike him, and he fell from grievous wounds, but not before shouting Sul blind. Dagoth Ur met Dumak and slew him, but not before Sunder struck his lord's heart. Nerevar turned away from Lorcan and struck down dragon Dagoth Ur in rage, but he took a mortal wound from Lorcan in return. But Nerevar feigned the death that was coming early, and so struck Lorcan with surprise. On his side, the heart had been made solid by Sunder's tuning blow, and Keenan could now cut it out, and it was cut out, and Lorcan was defeated, and the whole ordeal was thought over. Interesting. I thought it was only going to talk about the 5 songs, but that was a lot. Okay, wait, the report on Saarthal. Did I read this? The Fall of Saarthal by so many people. Okay, haven't started using... Yeah, I don't think I read this. If I have, then that's a problem, but because I don't remember it. But yeah. So this is the, The Imperial report on Saarthal. The Fall of Saarthal. Let it be known that the esteemed archaeologist has chosen to focus his boundless talents in the cooking and baking habits of the early First Era Nords. While this work will no doubt bring great glory and benefits to the Empire, it is clear that my limited expertise is of no use to this effort. I have instead been using my considerable free time to investigate a particular avenue of study, namely that of the Fall of Saarthal. Every child of the Empire knows that what happened here, that the first city of man on Tamriel was sacked by the elves, jealous and fearful of the threat men posed to them. Relations have obviously improved considerably since then, but to be able to see the results of the destruction firsthand, it is quite striking to note the degree of effort that went into the venture. The first task before me was differentiating between areas of original architecture and those that were rebuilt after Yskamor retook the city with his 500 companions, initially relying heavily on the expertise of archaeologist Floronius, and my ability to discern the difference for myself improved over time. Indeed, I was surprised to find that many areas of the city, far more than I would have believed, retained much of the original stonework. Work was clearly done to remedy the effects of the city being burned after the elves' assault, but I suspect they underestimated the durability of Nordic craftsmanship. Or rather, what I initially thought. Perhaps it was some mistaken sense of pride in the accomplishments of these early men, or perhaps it was just my inexperience that led me to this conclusion. Something was amiss, though. Repeated attempts to consult exceedingly perceptive archaeologists were unfruitful, often digressing into lectures on the bathing habits of Saarthal residents or the average number of potted plants in homes. I was again forced to rely on limited powers of observation and deduction, and so I have no conclusive results to report at this time. I can say with certainty that the initial attack on Saarthal seems to have been very focused and does not appear to correlate to any locations that have been established as points of defense or importance, while the eminent scholar Sendius has yet to examine my findings, or indeed show any interest in them. My inclination is to suggest that not only did the elves know the apparent layout of the city, but that their assault was based on a specific directive and perhaps a singular goal. My humble investigation shall continue as time permits. Okay. Oh god. I hope I'm not losing my voice. Oh god. Last King of the Ayleids. The Last King of the Ayleids by Herminia Sina. Okay. The Ayleids, for Heartland High Elves, ruled Cyrodiil in the long ages of myth before the beginning of recorded history. One of the earliest recorded dates, in fact, is the fall of White Gold Tower in the First Era 243, which is commonly assumed to mark the end of the Ayleids. Although Ayleid rule all over Cyrodiil was indeed broken in the First Era of 243, this was only one of the most obvious stages near the end of a long decline. The first 2 centuries of the First Era saw increasing strife between the great Ayleid lords of Cyrodiil. Alesia appears to have taken advantage of a period of civil war to launch her uprising. Imperial historians have traditionally attributed her victory to intervention from SKYRIM, but it appears that she had at least as much help from rebel Ayleid lords during the siege of White Gold Tower. The popular image of the Ayleids as brutal slave masters is based, in fact, of course, but it is less well known that a number of Ayleid princes continued to rule parts of Cyrodiil after 263 as vassals of the new Empress of Cyrodiil. This suggests either that Ayleid rule was not universally detested or that Alicia and her successors were more pragmatic than it is traditionally believed, or perhaps some of both. In any event, excavations at a number of Ayleid sites show continued occupation and even expansion during the so-called Late Ayleid period, First Era 243 to 498. At first, many Ayleid lords continued to rule the vassals of the new human regime. In other cases, Ayleid supporters of Alicia were even rewarded with new lands taken from slain enemies. It is not clear to what extent human slavery continued under the Cyrodiilic Empire. Humans continued to dwell in the Ayleid-ruled areas of Cyrodiil, but there is nothing definitive to show under what terms. This was an uneasy relationship from the beginning and was not destined to last long. Resentment at the continued presence of the Ayleid nobles with the Empire was a contributing factor to the rise of the so-called Alessian order founded by Maruk. Oh god, I'm confusing the name with the one from another book. The first victims of the Alessians were the Ayleids of Cyrodiil in the early 300s. The surviving Ayleids communities in human-ruled areas were obliterated one by one, the refugees temporarily swelling the power of the remaining Ayleid lordships. Then in 361, the Alessians gained control of the empire and enforced the Alessian doctrines throughout its domain. The Ayleid lordships were abolished. Enforcement of this decree does not appear to have required much direct violence. It seems that by this point, the balance of power was so overwhelmingly against them and their fate so long foreshadowed that most of the remaining Ayleids simply left Cyrodiil, eventually being absorbed into the elven populations of Valenwood and High Rock. Indeed, the rise of the Direni hegemony may be linked to this exodus of Ayleids from Cyrodiil, a connection so far little studied by historians. Still, a remnant Ayleid population seems to have survived the rule of the Alesians, because we hear of the last king of the Ayleids showing in the Battle of Glenumbria Moors, where the Direnis excessively defeated the Alesians in 482. How these king's people survived the preceding century is unknown. We do not even know who they were, although recent research points to Nenalata as the possible resting place of this last king. Unfortunately, in the current state of the empire, bones are no longer available for proper scientific investigation of such extensive ruins, so the answer to these questions will have to be left to future generations. Okay, those are letters. Okay. Nerevar Moon and Star. No author. This is a selection from a series of monographs by various Imperial scholars on Ashlander legends. In ancient days, the Deep Elves and a great host of Outlanders from the west came to steal the land of the Dunmer. In that time, Nerevar was the great Khan and war leader of the House people, but he honored the ancient spirits and the tribal law and became as one of us. So, when Nerevar pledged upon his great king of the Ancestors, one clan under Moon and Star, to honor the ways of the spirits and rights of the land, all the tribes joined the House people to fight a great battle at Red Mountain. Though many Dunmer tribesmen and housemen died at Red Mountain, the Dunmer were defeated and their evil magics destroyed, and the Outlanders driven from the land. But after this great victory, the power-hungry clans of the great houses slew Nerevar in secret, and setting themselves up as gods, neglected Nerevar's promises to the tribes. But it is said that Nerevar will come again with his ring and cast down the false gods, and by the power of his ring will make good his promise to the tribes, to honor the spirits and drive the outsiders from the land. Short but good. That was good. Nerevar at Red Mountain. The following is from the Apocrypha, the hidden writings of the Tribunal Temple. It is a scholarly retelling of a tradition transmitted through the Ashlanders concerning the battle at Red Mountain and subsequent events. The Ashlanders associate this tale with the telling of Alandro Sul, a shield companion of Nerevar who came to live along the Ashlanders after the death of Nerevar and during the ascension of the Tribunal. There are many variant treatments of this story, but the primary elements are consistent throughout the tradition. The murder of Nerevar, the tragic fate of Dagoth Ur, and the profane source of the Tribunal's divine power are denied by the Temple doctrine as ignorant Ashlander superstition, and not widely known among civilized Dunmer. Restain, present-day Morrowind, was contested ground between two very different types of Mer, the Chimer, who worshipped Dedra, and the Dwemer, who worshipped that profane and secret power. These two people warred with each other constantly until their lands were invaded by a young, vibrant, and violent alien creature, the Norths. Two heroes, one from the Chimer and one from the Dwemer, Induril, Nerevar, and Dumak Dwarfork, made peace between their people and together ousted the alien invaders. Then these two heroes worked long and hard to maintain that peace thereafter, though their counselors thought it could not last, or worse, that it shouldn't. Nerevar's queen and his generals, Almalexia, Sothasil, Vivek, told him to reclaim all Restain for his own, but Nerevar would not listen, for he remembered his friendship with Dumak. There would be only peace. Until Dagoth Ur arrived. House Dagoth had discovered the source of the profane and secret power of the Dwemer, the legendary heart of Dorkan, which Dumac's people had used to make themselves immortal and beyond the measure of the gods. In fact, one of their high priests, Kagrenak, was building a new god so that the Dwemer could claim Restain for their own. The tribunal urged Nerevar again to make war on the dwarves. Nerevar was troubled. He went to Dumac, his friend of all, and asked if Dagoth Ur said was true. But Karganak and the high priests of the Dwemer had kept their new god secret from the king, and Dumac said the Dwemer were innocent of any wrongdoing. Nerevar was troubled again and made pilgrimage to Holamayan, the sacred temple of Asura, who confirmed that all that Dagoth Ur said was indeed true, that the new god of the Dwemer should be destroyed for the safety of not only Restain, but for the whole world. When Nerevar were backed and told his tribunal what the goddess had said, his queen and generals felt themselves proved aright, and again counseled him to war. There were reasons that the Dwemer and Chimer had hated each other forever. Finally, Nerevar agreed, angered that his friend Dumac would lie to him, and went back to Vardenfell. This time the Chimer king was arrayed in arms and armor and had his hosts around him, and he spoke harshly to Dumac Dwarfork, king of Red Mountain. You must give up your worship of the heart of Lorcan, or I shall forget our friendship and the deeds that were accomplished in its name. And Dumac, who still knew nothing of Kagrenak's new god, but proud and protective as ever of his people, said, We shall not relinquish that which has been our way for years beyond reckoning, just as the Chimer will not relinquish their ties to the lords and ladies of oblivion, and to come at my door in this way, arrayed in arms and armor, and with your hosts around you, tells me you have already forgotten our friendship. Stand down, my sweet Nerevar, or I swear by the 15 and 1 golden tones I shall kill you and all of your people. And so the Chimer and Dwemer went to war. The Dwemer were very well defended by the fortress at Red Mountain, but the bravery and cleverness of Nerevar's queen and generals drew most of Dumac's armies out into the field and kept them there, so that Nerevar and Dagoth Ur could make their way into the heart chamber by secret means. There Nerevar met Dumac and the dwarf king, and they both fell from grievous wounds. Dagoth Ur slew Karganak and took the tools the Dwemer used to tap the power of the heart. He went to his lion lord, Nerevar, and asked him what to do with those tools. And Nerevar summoned Asura again, and she showed them how to use the tools to separate the power of the heart from the Dwemer people. And on the fields, the tribunal and their armies watched as the Dwemer turned into dust all around them as their stolen immortality was taken away. Back in Red Mountain, Nerevar told Dagoth Ur to protect the tools and the heart chamber until he returned. Dagoth Ur said, But shouldn't we destroy these tools at once, so that they will never be used for evil again? But Nerevar was confused by his wounds and his sorrow, for he still loved Dumac and the Dwemer people, and so went to the fields outside the Red Mountain to confer with his queen and his generals, who had foreseen that this war would come, and whose counsel he would not ignore again. I will ask the tribunal what we shall do with them, for they have had wisdom in the past that I had not. Stay here, loyal Dagoth Ur, until I return. Then Nerevar told his queen and generals all that had transpired on the Red Mountain, and how the Dwemer had used special tools to turn their people into immortals, and of the wondrous power of the heart of Lorcan. The tribunal decided that the Chimer should learn how to use this power so that Nerevar might claim Restain and the world for the people. Nerevar did not expect or want this, so he asked his queen and generals to help him summon Asura yet again for her guidance. But the tribunal had become as greedy as Karganak upon hearing of the power of the heart, and they coveted it. They made a ritual as if to summon Asura as Nerevar wanted, but Almalexia used poisoned candles, and Saarthal used poisoned robes, and Vivek used poisoned invocations. Nerevar was murdered. Then Asura came forth anyway and cursed the tribunal for their foul deeds. She told them that she would use her powers over dusk and dawn to make sure Nerevar would come back and make things right again. But the tribunal laughed at her and said that soon they would be gods themselves and that the Chimer people would forget their old ways of worship. And Asura knew this would be true and that it would take a long time before her power might bring Nerevar back. What you have done here today is foul beyond measure, and you will grow to regret it. For the lives of gods are not what mortals think, and matters what waits only years to mortals weigh on gods forever. And so that they might know forever their wicked deeds, Asura changed the Chimer into Dhammer, and their skin turned ashen and their eyes into fire. Let this mark remind you of your true selves, who, like ghouls, fed on the nobility, heroism, trust of their king. And then the tribunal went into Red Mountain and met with Dagoth Ur. Dagoth Ur saw that they had done, for his skin had changed as well, and he tried to avenge the death of Nerevar, but to no avail. He was driven off and thought dead. The tribunal found the tools he had been guarding, and thoroughly study of Karganeth's methods turned themselves into gods. Thousands of years after the apotheosis, the tribunal are still the gods of Morrowind, and of the old ways of worship are remembered only by a few, and the murder of Nerevar is known to fewer, but his queen and generals still fear his return, for the words of Asura linger long, and they see the mark of her curse on their people every day. Really good book. Nice. It's really nice, now that I think about it, that I'm reading all of these kind of in order, because they are kind of related. Like The Last King of the Ayleids, Nerevar's Moon and Star, and Nerevar at Red Mountain. Those were all kind of connected, which was great. I am kind of losing my voice, so I might cut it here. Okay, so there we go. Mixed Unit Tactics. Mixed Unit Tactics by the 5 Years War, Volume 1 by Codus Calonus. This is Volume 1, so I'm going to read it. If I ever get the other ones, I might just read it again with the other ones or something like that. The legions could learn from the unconventional tactics used by the Khajiit in the 5-year war against Valenwood. I was stationed at the Moth Legion Fort on the border near Dune and witnessed many of the northern skirmishes firsthand. The war started with the so-called Slaughter of Thorval. The Khajiit claimed that the Bosmer invaded the city without provocation and killed over 1,000 citizens before being driven off by reinforcements from a nearby jungle tribe. The Bosmer claimed that the attack was in retaliation for Khajiit bandits who were attacking wood caravans headed for Valenwood. In the spring of 3rd Era 396, the war moved closer to Fort Sphinxmoth. I was posted on lookout and saw parts of the conflict. I later spoke with both Khajiit and Bosmer who fought in the battle, and it will serve as an excellent example of how the Khajiit used a mixture of ground and tree units to win the war. The Khajiit began to fight in an unusual way by sending tree-cutting teams of Cathay, Wrath, and the fearsome Sente Wrath, or battle cats, into the outskirts of Valenwood's forests. When word reached the Bosmer that trees were being felled, allegedly a crime in the strange Bosmer religion, a unit of archers were dispatched from larger conflicts in the south. The Bosmer were thus goaded into splitting their forces into smaller groups. The Bosmer archers took up position in the remaining trees, whose branches were now 20 or more feet apart, allowing some light into the forest floor. The Bosmer bent the remaining trees with their magics into small fortifications from which to fire their bows. When the three cutters arrived the next morning, a half-dozen Khajiit fell to the Bosmer arrows in the first volley. After that, the Khajiit took large wooden shields from the back of their center rath and made a crude shelter. The Khajiit, even the enormous center rath, were able to hide between this shelter and one of the larger trees. When it became apparent that the Khajiit would not leave their shelter, some Bosmer chose to descend and engage the Khajiit sword to claw. When the Bosmer were nearly upon the shelter, one of the Khajiit began playing on a native instrument of plucked metal bars. This was a sign of some kind, and a small group of the man-like Oms and Omes rat emerged from covered holes in the forest floor. Although outnumbered, they were attacking from behind by surprise and won the ground quickly. The Bosmer archers in the trees would have still won the battle if they not having troubles of their own. A group of Dagi and Dagi rat, two of the less common forms of Khajiit, who live in the trees of the Tanmar forest, jumped from one tree to another under a magical cover of silence. They took up positions in the higher branches that would not hold the Bosmer's weight. When the signal came, they used their claws and either torches or spells of fire. Accounts from the two survivors I spoke with vary on this point. Okay, to distract the archers while the Battle of the Ground took place. A few of the archers were able to flee, but most were killed. Apparently, the Dagi and Dagi Rat have more magical ability than is widely believed, if they were able to keep themselves magically silenced for so long. One of the surviving Bosmer told me that he saw a few ordinary cats among the Dagi and even claimed that these ordinary cats are known as Alfik, that they were the spellcasters, but Bosmer are almost as unreliable as the Khajiit when it comes to the truth, and I cannot believe that house cat can cast spells. Would you imagine that? At the end of the day, the Khajiit lost perhaps a half-dozen fighters out of a force of no more than 4 dozens, while the Bosmer lost nearly an entire company of archers. The survivors were unable to report back before the second company of archers arrived, and the strategy was repeated again, with similar results. Finally, a much larger force was sent and the Bosmer won, and the Bosmer won that battle with the help of the native animals of Valenwood. That third skirmish and the Khajiiti response I will discuss in the second volume of the series. Okay, so this is a second volume. That's very nice. Very good. Okay. Let's see if my voice holds up for this. Tension of the Ancestor Moth. To be read by all novitiates of the temple. The order of the Ancestor Moth is as ancient as is novel. We nurture and celebrate our beloved ancestors, whose spirits are manifest in the Ancestor's moth. Each moth carries the yarn of an ancestor spirit, loosely translated as the will to peace. I'm butchering that word. Yarn can be sung into the silk produced by the ancestor moths. When the silk is in turn spun into cloth and embroidered with the genealogy of the correct ancestor, clothing of wondrous power can be made. Adepts of our order are gifted with prescient powers. The wisdom of the ancestors can sing the future into the present. For this reason, our order, and our order alone, has been given the privilege to interpret the Elder Scrolls. These writings exceed even the gods, both Aedra and Dedra, which... I'm not being able to read correctly today. Such insight into the inner fabric of reality comes at a price. Each reading of the Elder Scrolls is more profound than the last. Each leaves the priest blind for longer and longer periods of time, and I have already read this. Yeah, I already read this. Finally, the last reading arc, and let me just read a little bit more, see if I actually read this, but I think I have read something about the Ancestor Moth. Finally, the last reading achieves a nearly sublime understanding of what scrolls content, but the priest is left permanently blinded to the light of this world. No longer can he read the scrolls. This monastery is dedicated to the service of these noble members of our order. They now live out their lives with the Ancestor Moth and that they so love. Their underground domestics are well suited into the moths. They raise and nurture the fragile creatures, singing to them constantly. They harvest the silk and spin it into bolts of cloth. They wipe the cloth, embroidering it with the genealogies and histories of the ancestors that spun the silk. This is their new life. As they tend the ancestor moths, so we tend the blind monks. While they toil in dark, we serve in the light. They need food and water, we provide. They need tools and furniture, we provide. They need secrecy and anonymity, we provide. They need purveyors to sell the fruit of their labors, we provide. At one time, we also provided protection. Many generations ago, Gudrun came to our temple. Newly blinded by visions of what was to be, she brought with her new teachings. The visions of the ancestors foresaw the need of the monks to defend themselves. They train and practice the teachings of Gudrun constantly. They are masters of the sword, of no sword, the axes of no axe. As a novitiate, you will learn the teachings of Gudrun. You will learn the way of the peaceful fist. You will learn to serve the blind monks. You will learn to provide in time. In time, you may attain the peace and insight of the ancestor moths. Yeah, I think I read that one. A long time ago, a few months. Reality and Other Falsehood. I haven't read that one. It gave me alteration. Reality and Other Falsehoods, yeah. I thought maybe it says something else. Let me drink water. Things that you never know when it's going to be like a really long book or just a few pages. Okay, so. It is easy to confuse illusion and alteration. Both schools of magic attempt to create what is not there. I think I read this. The difference is in the rules of nature. Illusion is not bound by them, while alteration is. This may seem to indicate that alteration is the weaker of the two, but this is not true. Alteration creates a reality that is recognized by everyone. Illusion's reality is only in the mind of the caster and the target. To master alteration first, accept that reality is a falsehood. There is not such thing. A reality is a perception of greater forces impressed upon us for their amusement. Some say that these forces are the gods, others that they are something beyond the gods. For the wizard, it doesn't really matter. What matters is the appeal couched in a manner that cannot be denied. It must be insistent without being insulting. To cast alteration spells is to convince a greater power that it will be easier to change reality as requested than to leave it alone. Do not assume that these forces are sentient. Our best guess is that they are like wind and water, persistent but not thoughtful. Just like directing the wind or water, diversions are easier than outright resistance. Express the spell as a subtle change and it is more likely to be successful. No, I didn't read this. What I read, I think it was in Bero's, was it Bero's? Response to something, to a dissertation or something. They were talking about the difference, yeah, between alteration and illusion, but not that much. Okay, so Dragon War by Toral Shorik. This one I just cannot remember if I read. I actually tried reading it a little bit, see if I actually read it before. I don't think I read this. And it's not that long, so I'm just going to read it, and if in the middle I notice that I have read it, then yeah. I'll just leave it there. Okay, so in the Meretic era, when Ysgramor first set foot on Tamriel, his people bought with them a faith that worshipped animal gods. Certain scholars believe these primitive people actually worshipped the divines as we know them, just in the form of these totem animals. They deify the hawk, wolf, snake, moth, owl, whale, bear, fox, and the dragon. Every now and then you can stumble across the broken stone totems in the farther reaches of Skyrim. Foremost among all animals was the dragon. In the ancient Nordic tongue, it was drakon. Occasionally the term dovra is used, but the language or derivation of that is not known. Using either name was forbidden to all except the dragon priests. Grand temples were built to honor the dragons and appease them. Many of them survive today as ancient ruins haunted by dragur and undead dragon priests. Dragons, being dragons, embraced their role as god kings over men. After all, they were not fashioned in Akatosh's own image. Were they not superior in every way to the hordes of small, soft creatures that worshipped them? For dragons, powers equals truth. They had the power, so therefore it must be truth. Dragons granted small amounts of power to the dragon priests in exchange for absolute obedience. In turn, the dragon priests ruled men as equals to the kings. Dragons, of course, could not be bothered with actually ruling. In Atmora, where Yskamor and his people came from, the dragon priests demanded tribute and set down laws and codes of living that kept peace between dragons and men. In Tamriel, they were not nearly as benevolent. It's unclear if this was due to an ambitious dragon priest or a particular dragon or a series of weak kings. Whatever the cause, the dragon priests began to rule with an iron fist, making virtual slaves of the rest of the population. Okay. No, I haven't read this. When the populace rebelled, the dragon priests retaliated. When the dragon priests could not collect the tribute or control the masses, the dragon's response was swift and brutal, so it was the dragon war began. At first, men died by the thousands. The ancient text revealed that the few dragons took the side of men. Why they did this is not known. The priest of the 9 divines claim it was Akatosh himself that intervened. From these dragons, men learned magics to use against the dragons. The tide began to turn, and the dragons began to die too. The war was long and bloody. The dragon priests were overthrown, and dragons were slaughtered in large numbers. The surviving dragons scattered, choosing to live in remote places away from men. The dragon cult itself adapted and survived. They built the dragon mounds, entombing the remains of dragons that fell in the war. They believed that one day the dragons would rise again and reward the faithful. Okay, a little bit more lore about that. The true nature of orcs. Okay. Honestly, I have such a such a hard time reading names and stuff. So I apologize for the pronunciation. I'm butchering everything. But I cannot be bothered to actually look how they should be pronounced every time. So, yeah. True nature of orcs. Orcs were born during the later days of the Dawn era. History has mislabeled them beast folk, related to the goblin races, but the orcs are actually the children of Trinimac, strongest of the Altmeri ancestors' spirit. When Trinimac was eaten by the Daedroth prince, Boethiah, and transformed in that foul god's inside, the orcs were transformed as well. The ancient name for the orcs is Orsimer, which means the pariah folk. They now follow Malauch, the remains of Trinimac. Who is Malauch? He is more commonly known as the Daedroth prince Malagath, whose sphere is the patronage of the spurned and ostracized, the sworn oath, and the bloody curse. He is not technically a Daedra lord, nor do the other Daedra recognize him as such, but this is fitting for his sphere. All he was Trinimac, the champion of the High Elven pantheon, in some places more popular than Auriel, who protected them against enemies without and within. Then, Trinimac and his followers attempted to halt the Blothi dissident movement. Boethiah ate him. Trinicmac's body and spirit were corrupted and he emerged as Molagath. His followers were likewise changed for the worse. Despised by everyone, especially the inviolate Auriel, they quickly fled to the northern wastes near Saarthal. They fought the North and Chimer for a place in the world, but did not get much. In SKYRIM, Malagath is called Orcs, the All-Knocker, and his battles with Ysmir are legendary. That was a pretty short one. Words of the Wind. This book is like, I have it on my inventory for a long time. Because actually, first part of this video is going to be like half an hour that I recorded like a week and a half ago. But then I had to go to sleep because I looked at the time. It was like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. and I was like, oh. I went on too much with that. So yeah. And this kind of stayed there. Like all these other books are newer that I have gotten from Apocrypha and stuff. But this one is like from before. So yeah, finally I'll be able to finish that recording session. So yeah, Words of the Wind. This is a volume of verse collected from Ashlander wise women. May I shrink to dust is from the Ahemusa Ashlanders of the Gracelands. May I shrink to dust in your cold, wild wastes, and may my tongue speak its last hymn to your winds. I pray for the herder that whistles to his squire at play. I pray for the hunter that stalks the white walkers. I pray for the wise one that seeks under the hill, and the wife who wishes for one last touch of her dead child's hand. I will not pray for that which I have lost, when my heart springs forth from your soil like a seed, and blossoms anew beneath tomorrow's sun. But it was going to be longer. Actually, I think I have more time. There's one book left that I kind of left over here that I started reading, and it's in this bookshelf, and it's kind of obvious which one it is. So I left it right there. If I remember correctly, that book was so long. It was really late, and I was I was very sleepy. It's called Varieties of Faith in the Empire, and I remember nothing of this book. nothing. So yeah, I may as well just start reading it and see if I can finish it. Because it talks about all the differences and the different terms for every single deity in every single religion in this place, so it's really interesting. Ow. Thank God I brought myself a bottle of water because I'm going to need it. Okay, so Varieties of Faith in the Empire by Brother Mikhail Karakuxor of the Imperial College. This is my best attempt at listing the pantheons and associated divine spirits of Tamriel's dominant cultures. This list is by no means complete. The imperial city of Cyrodiil alone boasts a vast host of saints and holy spirits. It only includes the most important spirits revered by native members of the culture. Other et Ada, especially Tedra, are often familiar known to many cultures. Those specific names are included here only when they possess a particular cultural significance. The omission of any reference to the worship of the Argonians of Black Marsh is a result of my complete inadequacy in reconciling the obscure and contradictory accounts available to me on that subject. So, the 8 pantheons. Cyrodiil, Akatosh, Divella, Arkay, Zenithar, Mara, Stendar, Kinareth, Julianus, Cesar, Tiber Septim, Mori House, and Raman. SKYRIM, Alduin, Divella, Orkay, Tsun, Mara, Tsun? how do you pronounce that? Kain, Shunal, Shor, Izmir, Hermamora, Malak. Altmer, Auriel, Trinimac, Magnus, Siravain, Yfre, Xarxes, Mara, Stendar, Lorcan, Finaster, Bosmer, Auriel, Yfre, Arkai, Zen, Xarxes, Bandar, Mara, Stendar, Lorcan, Ermamora, Jone, Jod, Dunmer, Almalexia, Vivek, Sothasil, Boethiah, Mephala, Azura, Lorcan, Nerevar, Molakbal, Malakath, Shogorath, Merunstagon, Yokuba, Satakal, Rupka, Tuaka, Seth, Morhua, Morwa, Taba, Malok, Diagna, Sep, Honding, Leki, Onsi, Bretoni, Akatosh, Magnus, Yfre, Devela, Arke, Sanithar, Mara, Stendar, Kinareth, Julianus, Sheor, and Finaster. Elsewhere, Akatosh, Kenarithi, Riddlethar, Shakajay, Mara, Surrender, Lorkash, Rajin, Vandar, Azura, and Shegorath. Notes on the divine spirits of the pantheons. Akatosh, dragon god of time. Akatosh is the chief deity of the 9 divines, the major religious cult of Cyrodiil and its provinces, and one of 2 deities found in every Tamrielic religion. The other is Lorcan. He is generally considered to be the first of the gods to form in the beginning place. After his establishment, other spirits found the process of being easier, and the various pantheons of the world emerged. He is the ultimate god of the Cyrodiilic Empire, where he embodies the qualities of endurance, invincibility, and everlasting legitimacy. Alduin, World Eater. Alduin is the Nordic variation of Akatosh, and only superficially resembles his counterpart in the 9 divines. For example, Alduin's sobriquet, the World Eater, comes from myths that depict him as the horrible, ravaging firestorm that destroyed the last world to begin this one. North, therefore, see the god of time as both creator and harbinger of the apocalypse. He is not the chief of the Nordic pantheon. In fact, that pantheon has no chief. See shore below. This wellspring, albeit a grim and frightening one. Alkosh, dragon king of cats. Predidata dynasty Anakinine deity, a variation of the Altmeri Auriel, and thus an Akatosh as culture hero for the earliest Khajiit. His worship was co-opted during the establishment of the Riddlethar, and he still enjoys immense popularity in Elsewhere's wasteland regions. He is depicted as a fearsome dragon and creature the Khajiit say is just a really big cat. He repelled an early Altmeri pogrom of Pelinal Whitestrake during mythic times. Almalexia, Mother Morrowind. Most traces of Akatosh disappeared from ancient Chimera legends during the so-called Exodus, primarily due to that god's association with the steam and the steam with the Altmeri. However, most aspects of Akatosh which seem so important to the mortal races, namely immortality, historicity, and genealogy, have conveniently resurfaced in Almalexia, the most popular of Morrowind's divine tribunal. Arcade, god of the cycle of life and death, member of the 9 divines pantheon, and popular elsewhere as well. Arcade is often more important in those cultures where his father, Akatosh, is either less related to time or where his time aspects are difficult to comprehend by the layman. He is the god of burials and funeral rites, and is sometimes associated with the seasons. His priests are staunch opponents of necromancy and all forms of the undead. It is said that Arcade did not exist before the world was created by the gods under Lorcan's supervision, urging, or trickery. Therefore, he is sometimes called the Mortal's God. Auriel, king of the Altmer. The Elven Akatosh is Auriel. Auriel is the soul of Anu-El, who in turn is the soul of Anu, the Everything. He is the chief of most Almeri pantheons. Most Almeri and Bosmeri claim direct descent from Auriel. In his only known moment of weakness, he agreed to take his part in the creation of the mortal plane. That act, which forever sundered the elves from the spirit worlds of eternity. To make up for it, Auriel led the original Almer against the armies of Lorcan in mythic times, vanquishing that tyrant and establishing the first kingdoms of the Altmer, Altmora and Old Elonfey. He then ascended to heaven in full observance of his followers so that they might learn the steps needed to escape the mortal plane. Azura, goddess of dusk and dawn. Azura was the god ancestor that Azura was the god ancestor that taught the Chimer the mysteries needed to be different than the Altmer. Some of her more conventional teachings are sometimes attributed to Boethiah. In the stories, Azura is of the more communal cosmic force for the race as a whole than an ancestor or a god, also known as the anticipation of Sotha Sil. In Elsewhere, Azura is nearly a wholly separate entity, yet she is tied into the origins of Khajiit out of Aldmeri stock. Bandar, the bandit god. In most regions, Bandar is a marginal deity, a trickster spirit of thieves and beggars. In Elsewhere, he is more important, and he is regarded as the pariah. In this aspect, Bandar becomes the cleverness or desperate genius of the long-suffering Khajiit, whose last-minute plans always upset the imaginations of their elven or human enemies. Boethiah, Prince of Bloods, heralded by the prophet Beloth. Boethiah is the original goth ancestor of the Dark Elves. Through his illuminations, the eventual Chimer or Change folk renounced all ties to the Altmer and founded a new nation based on Daedric principles. All manner of dark elven cultural advances are attributed to Boethiah, from philosophy to magic to responsible architecture. Ancient Belothi categories are allegories. Okay. Ancient Belothi allegories are uniformly heroic, successes of Boethiah over enemies of every type. Foundation stories of Chimeri struggle, also known as the anticipation of Almalexia. Diagna, or Orichalk, god of the sideways blade. Ori, Togish cult of the Red Guards, originated in Yokuda during the 27 Snake Folk slaughter. Diagna was an avatar of the Hunding, the Yokudan god of Makeway, see below, that achieved permanence. He was instrumental to the defeat of the left-handed elves, as he brought Orihulk weapons to the Yokudan people to win the fight. In Tamriel, he led the very tight-knit group of followers against the Orcs of Orsinum during the height of their Asian power, but then faded into obscurity. He is now little more than a local power spirit to the Dragontail Mountains. Dibella, goddess of beauty, popular god of the 9 divines. In Cyrodiil, she has nearly a dozen different cults, some devoted to women, some to artists and aesthetics, and others to erotic instruction. Hermamora, the woodland man, ancient Atmoran demon who at one time nearly seduced the Nords into becoming Altmer. Most Yskamor myths are about escaping the wiles of old Hermamora, also called the demon of knowledge. He is vaguely related to the cult origins of the Morak tongue. Foresters Guild. Oh god. If only by association with his brother sister Mephala. Hunding the make-way god. Yokudan, spirit of perseverance over infidels. The Hunding has historically materialized whenever the Red Guards need to make way for their people. In Tamrielic history, this has happened 3 times. Twice in the First Era, during the Ragada invasion, and once during the Tiber War. In this last incarnation, the Hunding was said to have been either a sword or a crown, or both. Juno, rune god, the Nordic god of hermetic orders. After falling out of favor with the rest of that pantheon, he became Julianus of the 9 divines. He is absent in modern SKYRIM mythology. Jove, Big Moon God, Aldmeri god of the Big Moon, also called Maser or Marastir in Kashiti religion. Jode is the only one aspect of the lunar lattice, or Jagaje. Jone, Little Moon God, Aldmeri god of the Little Moon, also called Secunda Ostender Sorrow in Kashiti religion. Jone is only one aspect of the lunar lattice, or Jagaje. Julianus, god of wisdom and logic, often associated with Junal, the Nordic father of language and mathematics. Julianus is the Cyrillic god of Julianus is the Cyrillic god of literature, law, history, and contradiction. Monastic orders founded by Tiber Septim and dedicated to Julianus are the keepers of the Elder Scrolls. Kain, kiss at the end, Nordic goddess of the storm. Widow to shore and favored god of warriors. She is often called the mother of men. Her daughters taught the first Norse to use the Thum, or storm voice. Kinareth, goddess of air. Kinareth is a member of the 9 divines, the strongest of the sky spirits. In some legends, she is the first to agree to Lorcan's plan to invent the mortal plane and provides the space for its creation in the void. She is also associated with rain, a phenomenon said not to occur before the removal of Lorcan's divine spark. Leki, saint of the spirit sword. Oh, my neck hurts. Okay. Leki, saint of the spirit sword, goddess, daughter of Talpapa. Leki is the goddess of the aberrant swordsmanship. The Natotambu of Yukuda were to a standstill during the Mythic era to decide who will lead the charge against the left-handed elves. Their swordmasters, though, were so skilled in the best-known cuts as to be matched evenly. Leki introduced the ephemeral feint afterwards. A victor emerged and the war with the Aldmer began. Lorcan, the missing god. This creator, trickster, tester, deity is in every Tamrielic mythic tradition. His most popular name is the Almeri Lorcan, or Doomdrum. He convinced or contrived the original spirits to bring about the creation of the mortal plane, upsetting the status quo, which, much like his father, Padome had introduced instability into the universe in the beginning place. After the world is materialized, Lorcan is separated from his divine center, sometimes involuntarily, and wonders the creation of the Ed Ada. Oh, I apologize, there's a lot of dogs barking near my window. I don't know if it's picking it up though. He and his metaphysical placement in the scheme of things is interpreted as a variety of ways. In Morrowind, for example, he is a being related to the psychic endeavor, a process by which mortals are charged with transcending the gods that created them. To the High Elves, he is the most unholy of all higher powers, as he forever broke their connection to the spirit plane. In the legends, he is almost always the enemy of the Almer, and therefore a hero of early mankind. Lorcash, Moon Beast, Preridata Dynasty Anakinine deity, easily identified with the missing god, Lorcan. Magnus, or Magus, the god of sorcery. Magnus withdrew from the creation of the world at the last second, though it cost him dearly. What is left of him on the world is felt and controlled by mortals as magic. One story says that while the idea was thought up by Lorcan, it was Magnus who created the schematics and diagrams needed to construct the mortal plane. He is sometimes represented by an astrolabe, a telescope, or more commonly, a staff. See what I was saying? This has no end. It's a really interesting book. It has a lot of information. It's really nice reading it. But having to read it in one sitting is just killing me. But I feel like I want to finish this book. I really, really want to read it. Okay. Cyrodiilic legends say he can inhabit the bodies of powerful magicians and lend them his power, associated with Zurian Arctus, the Underking. Malakath, god of curses. Malakath is the reanimated tongue that was Trinimag, a somewhat weak but vengeful Dedra. The Dark Elves say he is also Malak, the god king of the Orcs. He always tests the dumber for physical weakness. Malok, Hoarder king, an enemy god of the Ragada, led the goblins against the Red Guards during the First Era, fled east when the army of the Hounding overtook his goblin hordes. Malok, Malokch, Malakath, an Orcish god. Maulok traveled the heirs of King Harald for a long time, fled east after his defeat at the Battle of Dragon Wall. In First Era 660, his rage was said to fill the sky with his slumberous, what the hell is that word? Slumberous hatred, later called the Year of Winter in Summer. Mara, goddess of love, nearly universal goddess. Origins started in mythic times as a fertility goddess. In Skyrim, Mara is a handmaiden of Cain. In the Empire, she is mother goddess. She is sometimes associated with Nir of the Anuar, the female principle of the cosmos that gave birth to creation. Depending on the religion, she is either married to Akatosh or Lorcan, or the concubine of both. Mehrunes Dagon, god of destruction, popular Dedic power. He is associated with natural dangers like fire, earthquakes, and floods. In some cultures, though, Dagon is merely a god of bloodshed and betrayal. He is an especially important deity in Morrowind, where he represents his near inhospitable terrain. Mephala, Androgyne. Mephala is the web spinner, or the spider god, in Morrowind. She was the ancestor that taught the Chimer the skills they would need to evade their enemies or to kill them with secret murder. Enemies were more numerous in those days since the Chimer were all small factions. He or she, along with Boethiah, organized the clan systems that eventually became the basis of the Grey Houses. They founded the Morad tongue and also called the anticipation of Vivek. And it keeps going. It keeps going. Oh god, I'm going to check how long it is to actually read this book. Like when I started and when I finished it. I don't know how long I have left. Okay, so Molag Bal, god of schemes, king. That's not a great thing to be king of. Dedrick, power of much importance in Morrowind. There, he is always the archenemy of Boethiah, the Prince of Plots. He is the main source of the obstacles of the Dummer and preceding Chimer people. In the legends, Molag Bal always tried to upset the bloodlines of the houses of otherwise ruined Dunmeri purity. A race of supermonsters said to live in Molag Amur are the result of his seduction of Vivek during the previous era. Mori House, first breath of man, ancient cultural hero, god of the Zero Nordics. Wow. Legend portrays him as the taker of the citadel in an act of mythic times that established human control over the valley heartland. He is often associated with the Nordic powers of Thum and therefore with Kinareth. Morwa. Teat? God. Yokudan fertility goddess. Fundamental deity in the Yokudan pantheon and the favorite of Tell Papa's wives. Still worshipped in various areas of Hammerfall, including Stross and Kai. Morwa is always portrayed as four-armed so that she can grab more husbands. I respect that. You do you. Nerevar, God Killer. The Chimeri King of Restain. The golden age of Old Beleth. Slain during the Battle of Red Mountain. Nerevar was the herald of the Triune Way, and is the foremost of the saints of the Mary faith. He is said to have killed Dumak, the last dwarven king, and feasted on his heart. Onsi, Bone Shaver, notable warrior god of the Yokudan Ragada. Onsi taught mankind how to pull their knives into swords. Orke, the Old Knocker, a lone god of the Nords, who seemed to have taken up his worship during the Aldmeri rule of Atmora. Nords believe they once lived as long as elves until Orke appeared. Through heathen trickery, he fooled them into bargain that bound them to the Count of Winters. At one time, legend says, Nords only had a lifespan of 6 years due to Orke's foul magic. Shor showed up, though, and through unknown means removed the curse, throwing most of it into the nearby orcs. Interesting. Finestar, hero god of the Somerset Isles, who taught the Elmer how to naturally live another 100 years by using a shorter walking stride. Rajin, footpad, thief god of the Kashidi, who grew up in the Black Yargo section of Sanchal, the most famous folklore in Elsewhere's history. Rajin is said to have stolen a tattoo from the neck of Empress Gintira as she slept. Okay. And it keeps going. Okay. Breathe. Reman, the Cyrodiil, culture god hero of the Second Empire. Reman was the greatest hero of the Akaviri trouble. Indeed, he convinced the invaders to help him build his own empire and conquered all of Tamriel except for Morrowind. He instituted the rites of becoming emperor, which included a ritual geas to the Amulet of Kings, a soul gem of immense power. His dynasty was ended by the Tumeri Moraktung at the end of the First Era, also called the Worldly God. Riddle Thar, Two Moons Dance. The cosmic order deity of the Kashidi, the Riddle Thar, was revealed to Elsewhere by the prophet Thar Ridata the Main. The Riddle Thar is more a set of guidelines in which to live than a single entity, but some of its avatars like to appear as humble messengers of the gods, also known as the sugar god. Ruptka, Talpapa, chief deity of the Yokudan pantheon. Ruptka, more commonly Talpapa, was the first god to figure out how to survive the hunger of Saarthal. Following his lead, the other gods learned the walkabout, or a process by which they can persist beyond one lifetime. Old Papa set the stars in the sky to show lesser spirits how to do this too. When there were too many spirits to keep track of, though, Rupka created a helper out of that skin of past worlds. This helper is Sep, see below, who later creates the world of mortals. Saarthal, the world skin. Yokudan, god of everything. A fusion of the concepts of Anu and Padome. Basically, Saarthal is much like the Nordic Alduin, who destroys one world to begin the next. In Yokudan mythology, Saarthal had done and still does this many times over, a cycle which prompted the birth of spirits that could survive the transition. These spirits ultimately become the Yokudan pantheon, popular god of the Alkir's nomads. I need to stretch. Sheogorath, the mad god. The fearful obeisance of Sheogorath is widespread and is found in most Tamrieli quarters. Contemporary sources indicate that his roots are in Aldmeri creation stories. The rain, he is born when Lorcan's divine spark is removed. One crucial myth calls him the Sithis-shaped hole of the world. Sheor, bad man. In Brittany, the bad man is the source of all strife. He seems to have started as the god of crop failure, but most modern theologians agree that he is a demonized version of the Nordic Shore, born during the dark years after the fall of Saarthal. Sep, the snake. Yokudan version of Lorcan. Sep is born when Tol Papa creates someone to help him regulate the spirit trade. Sep, though, is driven crazy by the hunger of Saarthal, and he convinces some of the gods to help him make an easier alternative to the walkabout. This, of course, is the world as we know it, and the spirits who follow Sep become trapped here, to live out their lives as mortals. Sep is punished by Tol Papa for his transgressions, but his hunger lives on as a void in the stars, a non-space that tries to upset mortal entry into the far shores. Shezar, god of man. Cyrodiilic version of Lorcan, whose importance suffers when Akatosh comes to the fore of the Imperial, really Alessian religion. Shezar was the spirit behind all human undertaking, especially against Aldmeri aggression. He is sometimes associated with the founding of the first Cyrodiilic battle mages in the present age of racial tolerance. Shezar is all but forgotten. Sure, god of the underworld. Nordic version of Lorcan, who takes sides with men after the creation of the world. Foreign gods, in example, elven ones, conspire against him and bring about his defeat, dooming him to the underworld. At modern myths depict him as a bloodthirsty warrior king who leads the Nords to victory over the Aldmeri oppressors time and time again. Before his doom, Shor was the chief of the gods, sometimes also called children's god. See Orc above. Ah yeah, he was mentioned there. Saarthal, Mystery of Morrowind. Okay. Saarthal, Mystery of Morrowind. God of the Dunmer, Saarthal is the least known of the Divine Tribunal. He is said to be reshaping the world from his hidden Clockwork City. Stendarr, god of mercy, god of the nine divines. Stendarr has evolved from his Nordic origins into a deity of compassion or sometimes righteous rule. He is said to have accompanied accompanied Tiber Septim in his later years. In early Altmeri legends, Stendarr is the apologist of men. Stund, Court of Ransom, Nordic precursor to Stendarr, brother of Zund. Shield Thane of Shore. Stund was a warrior god that fought against the Altmeri pantheon. He showed men how to take and the benefits of taking prisoners of war. Ziravain, Warlock's god, an Altmeri god ancestor of magic. Ziravain aided Bendu Olo in the fall of Slod. Through judicious use of his magical ring, Ziravain saved many of the scourge of the Thracian plague. He is also called the Apprentice God, for he is a favorite of the younger members of the Mages Guild. Taba, Bird God. Bird? Taba. Yokudan Spirit of the Air. Taba is most famous for leading the Yokudans to the Isle of Herne after the destruction of their homeland. She has since become assimilated into the mythology of Kinnareth. She is still very popular in Hammerfell among sailors, and her shrines can be found in most port cities. Tiber Septim, Talos, the Dragonborn, heir to the seat of Thunder Kings. Tiber Septim is the most important hero god of mankind. He conquered all of Tamriel and ushered in the Third Era and the Third Empire, also called Ysmir, Dragon of the North. Trinimac, strong god of the early Altmer, in some places more popular than Auriel. He was a warrior spirit of the original Elven tribes that led armies against the men. Boethiah is said to have assumed his shape in some stories. He even eats Trinimac, so that he could convince a throng of Altmer to listen to him, which led to the eventual chimeric conversion. He vanishes from the mythic stage after this, to return as the dread Malagav. Altmeri propaganda portrays this as the dangers of Dunmeri influence. Soon, extinct Nordic god of trials against adversity, died defending shore from foreign gods. Tuaka, tricky god, Yokudan god of souls. Tuaka, before the creation of the world, was the god of nobody really cares. When Tel Papa undertook the creation of the walkabout, Tuaka found a purpose. He became the caretaker of the far shores and continues to help Redguards find their way into the afterlife. His cult is sometimes associated with Arcane in the more cosmopolitan regions of Hammerfell. Vivek, Master of Morrowind, warrior poet, god of the Dunmer. Vivek is the invisible keeper of the Holy Land, ever vigilant against the dark gods of the volcano. They have saved the Dunmeri people from certain death on numerous occasions, most notably when they taught them how to breathe water for a day so that they could flood Morrowind and kill the Akaviri invaders. In the Third Era, year 572. Xarxis. Xarxis is the god of ancestry and secret knowledge. He began as a scribe to Auriel and has kept track of all Dunmeri accomplishments, large and small, since the beginning of time. He created his wife, Ogma, from his favorite moments in history. Yfre, god of the forest, most important deity of the Mossberry pantheon. While Auriel Time Dragon might be the king of the gods, the Bosmer revere Yfre as the spirit of the now. According to the Wood Elves, after the creation of the mortal plane, everything was in chaos. The first mortals were turning into plants and animals and back again. Then Yfre transformed himself into the first of the Elanthe, or Earthbones. After these laws of nature were established, mortals had a semblance of safety in the new world, because they could finally understand it. Yfre is sometimes called the storyteller for the lessons he taught the first Bosmer. Some Bosmers still possess the knowledge of the chaos time Haha. Some Bosmers still possess the knowledge of the Chaos Times, which they can use to great effect. The Wild Hunt. Ysmir, Dragon of the North, the Nordic aspect of Talos. He withstood the power of the Greybeard's voices long enough to hear their prophecy. Later, many Nords could not look on him without seeing a dragon. Zen, God of Toil, Bosmeri god of payment in kind. Studies indicate origins in both Argonian and Akaviri mythologies, perhaps introduced into Valenwood by Kothringi sailors, ostensibly an agriculture deity. Zen sometimes proves to be an entity of a much higher cosmic order. His worship died out shortly after the Knathen flu. Seth, god of farms. Yokudan, god of architecture. Agriculture, what the fuck are you reading? Okay. Seth, god of farms. Yokudan, god of agriculture. I almost said it wrong again. Renounced his father after the world was created, which is why Tolpapa makes it so hard to grow food. Zenithar, god of work and commerce, trader god. Member of the Nine Divines, Zenithar is understandably associated with Zen in the Empire. However, he is a far more cultivated god of merchants and middle nobility. His worshippers say, despite his mysterious origins, Zenithar is the god that will always win. And it's done! Yay! It was a really good book, but it was long as hell. Yeah, it was really long. I just noticed that I'm already like in an hour or something of recording. Wow. Really long time to record that book, but it's really good. It's really nice seeing all the variations in the different religions in I mean, not in Skyrim, but in everything else. I can put another book here. Yeah, this one. Take them. I fuck up all the time. Okay, so I store it. I store that one. That one too. That one too. Yes. Yes. Go ahead. And just put them as many as... Okay. There we go. I just wanted to add one. 0 books here. Okay. How many can I put here? 0. I can put 4. Okay. Then I can store this one and this one. And that's already full. Can I activate anything here? No. You can put 0 here. Okay. I'll just put the rest there. Oh no, I can actually put them here. Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, I didn't have many to put there. Only 2. But that's good. It's actually filling up quite nicely. I do have these ones. I have like one... Oh, let me see which, because I have... Yeah, I think that this one here... No, this one. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I don't know how many of these are. So I might just read these all in like one take next time. I don't know. Wolf Queen, I still missing a few, and the Song of Pelinal, I also missing a few volumes. So those are the ones that I want to complete, and then I mean for now. So yeah, that will be all for today. So goodbye, bye bye.